Aloha, and welcome to this presentation of the Vegan Society of Hawaii. Since 1990, the Vegan Society of Hawaii has been following our mission of promoting human health, animal rights, and protection of the environment by means of whole food, plant-based vegan education. We're thrilled to welcome today our distinguished guest, Neal D. Barnard, MD, FACC. Dr. Neal Barnard is president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and the author of a great many books on nutrition, including his latest, Your Body in Balance, The New Science of Food, Hormones, and Health. Dr. Barnard's research, funded by the National Institutes of Health, paved the way for viewing type 2 diabetes as a potentially reversible condition for many people. In his latest study, his research team found a way to knock out menopausal hot flashes for many women using just a simple diet change. Dr. Barnard is an adjunct professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. He leads programs advocating for preventive medicine, good nutrition, and higher ethical standards in research. His research contributed to the acceptance of plant-based diets in the dietary guidelines for Americans. In 2015, he was named a Fellow of the American College of Cardiology. In 2016, he founded the Barnard Medical Center in Washington, D.C., as a model for making nutrition a routine part of all medical care. And now, a warm aloha and welcome to Dr. Neal Barnard.
Oh, thank you, Lorraine. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's nice to see some old friends and longtime friends. Hi, Ruth. Hi, Ann. Hi, everybody. It's been a long time since we've been able to get together live and in person. So I'm grateful to technology for allowing us to share a little time. What I wanted to talk about today is something that really wasn't on my radar before. The old way of thinking about food was you'd eat something unhealthy, and so your cholesterol goes up. You get heart problems. Or you eat high calorie foods, and so you gain weight. It was bad food causes problem. But what we started to discover is that everything in your body is controlled by hormones in various ways. Insulin affects your blood sugar, or thyroid hormone affects your energy, or testosterone and estrogen will affect reproduction. And those hormones, which are sort of the controllers of everything in your body, in turn can be controlled by food. Most people have no idea how it works, but we got really excited about the power that we had in our hands. I want to share that with you today. I'm going to start actually not by talking about hormones. I want to talk first about heart disease, because this is kind of what inspired us. Heart disease is the thing that kills most of us. And that top artery that you see, that's a healthy artery. The blood vessels are going right through it. They're bringing oxygen to the heart muscle. That's great. The second one has that ugly looking blister in it. That's an atherosclerotic plaque. Particles of cholesterol are irritating the side of it. They're pinching off the blood flow. So the blood flow doesn't get through quite as well. The patient has chest pain, angina. Now the bottom one, that blister, that atherosclerotic plaque, has burst open, and it's like a cork. The blood cells don't get through at all. And that means that the heart muscle on the other end of that isn't getting anything. It dies. That's a heart attack. Okay, so you know Dr. Dean Ornish. 30 years ago, he inspired us with this incredible research. He said, I want to see if I can open up those arteries again, not with surgery, not with medicine, but with diet and lifestyle. He went around the San Francisco hospitals. He recruited volunteers to begin this program, vegetarian foods. Why vegetarian? Because there's no cholesterol in plants. There's no animal fat, obviously, in plants. Half-hour walk every day. Manage stress, which is why he didn't do the study here in Washington, D.C., and avoid tobacco. And that was the whole program. He didn't use medicines, not even cholesterol-lowering drugs. But the results were phenomenal. First of all, the chest pain that the participants had was gone in about 4 to 6 weeks. Their total cholesterol dropped 24%. Their LDL, are you familiar with this? Bad cholesterol dropped 37%. That's what a medication would do, but this was the result of eating beans and rice and healthy plant foods. Now, weight loss was not the goal. But your average person lost 22 pounds in the course of a year without starving or going on a low-calorie diet. But what got the headlines was that everybody had an angiogram. That's an X-ray of the heart. And the arteries were opening up so much that you could see a measurable difference in 82% of the participants. No medication, no surgery, no coronary artery bypass graft, no roto-rooter, nothing. The arteries opened up with this diet and lifestyle alone. Now, let me show you an angiogram. This is one that, you know, Caldwell Esselstyn, Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Esselstyn shared this with me. This is an angiogram actually of a surgeon. Yep, the surgeon has a really diseased artery. It's the distal left anterior descending artery. We call this the widowmaker because this means your spouse is going to become your widow. This is a killer. This artery is all crinkly and narrowed with atherosclerosis. The surgeon could not be treated with a stent. A stent is a little pipe that you put in. The diseased part of that artery was too long for that. Also, he couldn't tolerate statin drugs. He couldn't tolerate cholesterol-lowering medications. What's his choice? Vegan diet, keep the fat really low. And now let me show you the result. That is an artery that has regained its normal configuration. Now, if you cut your skin will heal. You break a bone, the bone will heal. But can an artery heal? The answer apparently is yes. Okay, so animal products have cholesterol. Animal products have a lot of saturated fat, bad fat. It's bad because it causes your body to make more cholesterol that irritates the artery walls and causes this problem. But look at plants, like no cholesterol, virtually no saturated fat, with a couple of exceptions. Coconut oil is an exception. Palm oil is an exception. They have saturated fat. They will raise your cholesterol, and you're best off avoiding them. But other plant foods have no cholesterol and really low saturated fat. Yep. And when your friends say, well, what about fish? The answer is fish is an animal product. It's got cholesterol. It's got saturated fat too. If you want to heal your arteries, you throw that away. Okay. So my team was inspired, and we decided to do a study for people who were in good health, but wanted to lose some weight. So we brought in 64 overweight women. They had all done Atkins and South Beach and Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem, and they'd all lost weight, and then they had put the weight back on, and they were frustrated. So what we did was we randomly assigned them either to a low-fat vegan diet, no animal products, or a conventional diet. And the conventional diet was drawn from the National Cholesterol Education Program. And we asked them not to change their exercise, 14-week study. So what the women in the vegan group were encouraged to eat were fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes, or I might say beans and lentils. And they were allowed to eat unlimited portions. And our participants actually were a bit horrified to see how indulgent this program seemed to be. They could eat pancakes as long as they were made vegan style. They could eat chili and linguine as long as it didn't have dairy products and meat and that kind of thing. And in fact, one of the participants discovered that Twizzlers are vegan. Okay, not recommending that, but it happens to be true. So what happened? First of all, they lost weight. The plant-based group, about not quite 13 pounds in 14 weeks. In other words, they're losing about a pound a week. For the control group, following the National Cholesterol Education Program diet, about 8 pounds. Okay, what really counts is the control group put that weight back on as the years went by. But the vegan group didn't. They just kept losing weight and losing weight and losing weight and losing weight. Okay, so the NIH in 2003 gave our research team a grant to say, what can we do for diabetes? I don't need to tell you. It's getting more common, and not just here in the United States, but worldwide. This is the other pandemic that cuts your life short by 10 or 15 years. Leads to blindness, amputations, loss of kidney function. What we did was we tested the current diet, a portion-controlled diet, versus a plant-based diet. Let me describe the diets. The portion-controlled diet is the diet that you'd get in a typical diabetes clinic. You're overweight, let's cut calories. Keep your carbohydrate kind of steady. Don't eat the bad fats like trans fats. That's pretty typical advice. But the plant-based diet did not limit calories and it didn't reduce carbohydrate at all. It just said animal products gone. Keep oils to a minimum and favor low glycemic index foods. Don't get hung up on that. White bread is a high glycemic index food. That just means white bread will cause your blood sugar to rise rather rapidly. But let's say it's rye bread or pumpernickel bread. That will be much more gentle on your blood sugar. So favor the low glycemic index foods. Beans, fruits, those are low glycemic index foods. Okay, so to cut to the chase, what we track is hemoglobin A1C. That's a measure of your blood sugar control. And the red line is the portion control group, the conventional group. They did really well. They dropped their A1C by 0.4 absolute percentage points. That's great. The vegan group dropped their A1C by 1.2 absolute percentage points. That's huge. 3 times better than the best current diet, better than oral medicines. This plant-based diet, just beans, rice, grains, fruits, vegetables, very, very powerful. And let me describe Vance. Vance was one of our first research participants, and he told me about his family. Vance's grandmother had diabetes. Vance's grandfather had diabetes. He said, if I don't get my diabetes under better control, I'm gonna lose a leg. I'm gonna go blind. I'm gonna end up on dialysis. Vance's father was dead at age 30. But Vance started the plant-based diet. And he said something kind of surprising. He said, this is the easiest diet you could be on. And what he meant was previous diabetes diets said you got to go hungry. You eat 2,000 calories a day. Here's the menu. It adds up to 1,500. When you get to that number, stop. And by about Wednesday, the patient is ready to eat the sofa. We didn't make him do that. We didn't make him add up his carbohydrate grams or anything. It's just instead of meat sauce on your spaghetti, have the tomato sauce on your spaghetti. Instead of meat chili, have the bean chili. And he lost 60 pounds over about a year. He stopped his diabetes medications. His A1C was 9.5 to start. That's high. It dropped to 5.3, which is not only a lot lower than it was before, that is a normal value. I want to tell you, when I got his lab slip, I closed my office door and I paced around for probably 10 minutes trying to decide, could I tell Vance that he was cured? Vance ended up having an A1C value that was in the absolutely normal range. And that was something that we thought was not possible before. We thought that once you have diabetes, you'll always have diabetes. And a lot of doctors still say that today. But we now found here's a person who didn't have any sign of diabetes anymore. And that got us thinking that maybe other people could reverse their diabetes too. And of course, now we see that every single day, not only in our clinic, Barnard Medical Center, but in other clinics worldwide. Okay, let me explain to you how this works. I want to show you the cause of type 2 diabetes. What I'm going to show you is something that most people have no idea of, and even doctors have kind of missed out on this. I want to show you what causes diabetes and how we make it go away. This purple oval is a cell. Call it a muscle cell. And cells run on glucose. That's their gasoline. That's the fuel that allows them to go, okay? Glucose is a good thing. When it gets into that cell, it powers the cell. But the problem is glucose cannot get into the cell. The cell membrane repels it. It keeps it out. So there is the key. The key is insulin. The insulin is made in your pancreas, which is a little strap-shaped organ behind your belly button. And the pancreas makes the insulin, it goes through the blood, attaches to the surface of the cell. And once that happens, it opens up these little channels and the glucose comes inside. Okay? So insulin lets the glucose in so the glucose can do its thing. What could ever go wrong? What goes wrong is I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and that's my dinner. And that's my lunch, and that's my breakfast, and yeah, there's a lot of fat in these foods, and that's not just true here. That's true in Honolulu too, isn't it? It's true in Omaha. It's true in New York. It's true in San Francisco. People are eating a lot of fatty stuff. So what? Here's what: the fat you eat starts building up inside your cells. Let me be clear. This is not fat on your belly. This is not fat on your thighs. This is fat particles that are inside your muscle cells, inside your liver cells. They're microscopic. They're building up there. And, oh, by the way, doctors hate words like fat because it only has 3 letters. So we'll call it intramyocellular lipid, but that all it is fat inside your muscle cells. And when the fat builds up inside your muscle cells, the insulin still attaches, but it doesn't work anymore. It's as if somebody took chewing gum and jammed it in your front door lock. Your key is not going to work anymore. There is nothing wrong with your insulin, and there's nothing wrong with your front door key. But fat is getting in the way. That fat came from chicken wings and cheese and bacon and all kinds of fatty stuff. And it's building up inside your cells. Okay, so now the glucose can't get into the cell anymore. You are now insulin resistant. And the doctor says, I wouldn't eat fruit. I wouldn't eat any starch at all. And we'll try to get your blood sugar down that way. Stop. Let's do something else. Let's throw out the animal products. No chicken, no fish, no beef. Get it out of your diet. Now there is 0 animal fat in your diet. Let's also keep oils really low too. There's not much of any kind of fat in your diet. What happens? What happens is that fat starts to dissipate, starts to go away. The fat is exiting the cell, and when it does, your insulin works again. That's what happened in Vance's body. That'll happen in your body. And now the glucose can come into the cell, your blood sugar goes down, the glucose gets into the cell where you want it to be, and everybody's happy. Diabetes is a 2-way street. And the sooner I get to you with a low-fat vegan diet, the more likely you are to be able to say goodbye to your medications and say goodbye to diabetes. Now, if diabetes has been beating up your body for 25 or 30 years, I may not get you off all your medications, but this diet will improve your health. It will reduce your need for medications in all likelihood. You may get off them, and it will greatly reduce the likelihood of complications. Okay, so let me take you to Yale University. Kit Peterson and Jerry Schulman did an amazing study. They published this in the New England Journal of Medicine 2004. They brought in 26 healthy people. They were healthy, but they all had a parent or grandparent with diabetes. They gave them a glucose tolerance test. You drink a sugary syrup. And if your blood sugar comes up, but then comes right back down, that means your insulin is doing its job. It's getting that sugar into your cells where it belongs. You're insulin sensitive. But if the blood sugar goes up after you drink the syrup and it just stays up, that means your insulin isn't working. Your insulin is not able to get that sugar out of your blood into your cells. You're insulin resistant, okay? So who are these people? They're young people. They're in their 20s. They're not heavy. They're thin. And they don't have diabetes. They've got low, healthy A1C levels. Now, let's get on the elevator. Let's go down to the basement, and there is this machine. This is a magnetic resonance spectroscopy machine. What this allows us to do is to look into your body. Specifically, I'm going to look in your muscle cells. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look inside your muscle cells and see how much of that fat, that intramyocellular lipid, is in your body. I can do this in a person, in anybody. Okay, so on the left-hand side of this is the amount of fat in the individual's bodies. Every dot here is a person. And that's the amount of fat inside their muscle cells of the healthy people, the insulin-sensitive people. That's the amount of fat in the people who are insulin resistant. In other words, the people in the right-hand side, in the tan, those people had a big buildup of fat inside their muscles, and that was why their blood sugar was staying high. Okay, let's go on. Let's look at their mitochondria. Do you remember that from high school biology? Your mitochondria are your little burners inside your cells. They are burning up fuels, giving you energy. This is the mitochondrial activity of the insulin-sensitive people, the healthy people. This is the mitochondrial activity of the insulin-resistant people. In other words, it's diminished. What am I showing you? These are young, healthy people. But they already have fat building up inside their cells, and it is shutting down their body's ability to turn fuel into energy. They don't have diabetes, and they're not going to have diabetes for another 10 or 15 years. But the process has started. And you could go into any high school in Hawaii, in California, in North America. And you could get 16 and 17-year-old kids, you could put them in the MR scanner, and you're going to see fat inside their muscle cells. The process of diabetes has started in their bodies. And when they get it at age 35 or 45, their doctor says, well, I guess it's genetic. Don't eat bread. Don't eat fruit. You'll never get away from this disease. You'll be on medication for the rest of your life. Stop. The problem is in the cell. If we can get that cell to change with a low-fat vegan diet, then your hormone, insulin, is going to start working again. Okay. Now I'd like to talk to you about your car insurance. This is Geico. The reason I'm showing you Geico is that it's 3 blocks from my office. Geico's national headquarters is there. And some years ago, the health director and our team decided to do a study at Geico to see if this would work, not in our laboratory, but where people work. And so what we decided to do was for 18 weeks, encourage people to go on a completely vegan diet with a once-a-week lunchtime class. And the cafeteria manager said, let me make some vegan foods for people. Now, this was a little bit of a new idea for the manager, and there were some missteps along the way. What's wrong with this menu offering? Anybody see? That's right. You don't top a vegan burger with bacon and cheese. Okay, but he figured it out. And what you expect might happen, did happen, is people lost weight, their cholesterol levels went down, their blood sugars went down, their A1C went down. So we then did another study, also with Geico, in 10 different cities to see, would this work in Tucson? Would it work in Dallas? Would it work in Macon, Georgia? Would it work in other places around the country? And the answer was yes. When people go wherever they are on a totally plant-based diet, if you're in that group, that's the green line, you lose weight and your A1C improves. I don't care who you are, where you're from. This diet's going to be very helpful. Okay, let me shift gears. We've talked about how we can control this hormone, this insulin, in ways we hadn't imagined that can allow diabetes to improve dramatically or to go away. Now I'd like to tell you about a phone call that I got a number of years ago. A young woman called me up on the phone. Said, Dr. Barnard, I need your help. I can't get out of bed. She said she had menstrual cramps. That a lot of women have cramps, but for maybe 1 in 10, they're just off the scale, can't get to work today type pain. Yeah. That was her situation. And she asked me if I could give her some Demerol, which is a pretty heavy duty painkiller. And I said, yeah, I can give you some heavy painkillers to get you through today and tomorrow so you can function. But as she was describing her symptoms, I found myself wondering what was causing this and how could we stop this? Not just now. What I asked her to do was to start a diet with no animal products and to minimize oils. So she said, I'll try the diet. I'll avoid animal products. I'll keep oils really low. And it helped her enormously. Her pain didn't come next month or the month after that or the month after that. In fact, she was pain-free until she started getting kind of loose on her diet. And then the pain came back. Now, I thought that was impressive, that here was a person who was cured of menstrual cramps. But one person isn't enough proof. So with our colleagues at Georgetown University's Department of OBGYN, we brought in a group of people for a research study. Half of them went on the diet I just described. No animal products, keeping oils low. The other half took a supplement, a nutritional capsule that was really a dummy pill, a placebo. And after 2 months, they switched. The diet group then took the supplement group started the diet. So that we could compare each person against herself on the diet, on the supplement. And in a nutshell, it worked. We published the findings in the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and pain intensity fell, pain duration fell, and PMS symptoms like bloating and water retention improved as well. So how could food affect reproductive function? Okay, let me explain it. This is estrogen. Now, estrogen is actually a group. There are estrogens. There's estradiol, estriol, estrone, but I'm going to call them all just estrogens. And this is a woman's monthly cycle. As the cycle begins, she has very little estrogen in her blood. But as 2 weeks go by, she reaches a peak and then she falls because she's ovulating now. And then in the third week, the amount of estrogen rises again because the uterus is the most optimistic organ in the body. Every month it's convinced we're going to get pregnant for sure. So the amount of estrogen rises to thicken up the inner lining of the uterus to get it ready for pregnancy. But at the end of that third week, the disappointed uterus says, darn, we're not pregnant again. So the amount of estrogen falls and the uterine lining is cast out with menstrual flow. But the point is that foods can change estrogen function. Foods can make it go up, foods can make it go down. And here's what happens. In the middle of your screen, that's the uterus. And off to the side, you see the ovaries, and they're connected by the fallopian tubes. That pink inner lining, that's the endometrial layer. That's where the embryo attaches. And estrogen thickens that endometrial lining up. That's normal. But when this young woman was calling me on the phone, and she said, I can't get out of bed, I'm feeling miserable, my hypothesis was that that endometrial lining was thickening up too much. Because that's what happens. And if it thickens up too much, at the end of the month, it degrades, it releases prostaglandins, which cause pain. Okay? And there's another thing. Sometimes those endometrial cells escape and they go all around the abdomen. They look like these little kind of raisins. Those, they swell, they bleed, they cause really terrible pain. And you don't want this. They're on the outside of the uterus, on the ovary, on the fallopian tubes, on the abdomen, on the large bowel, on the small bowel. And this is endometriosis. So, okay, so how could food affect these processes? When the young woman called me up, I remembered a research study done at Tufts University back in the 90s. Researchers brought in 48 young women. They brought them into what we call a metabolic ward. That's a place where you've got a kitchen and you're going to control what everybody eats during a research study, day after day after day. And they tried different diets for 8 to 10 weeks each. They did either a low-fat diet, or for 8 to 10 weeks, they would do a high-fiber diet or combinations of all different things. And what they found is if you're just reducing fat, you don't do anything else, you're just cutting the fat out of your diet, estradiol drops, estrone drops, these different estrogen fractions diminish. If you do nothing other than increase fiber, that's beans and vegetables and whole grains, the estrogen levels drop too. Now, they weren't thinking about menstrual cramps. The researchers were thinking breast cancer. Because if I can change a woman's diet so that her hormones diminish, that's less of a driver for breast cancer to form or to progress, okay? So when this young woman called me up and I suggested a vegan diet that was very low in fat, what was I doing? I was doing the best of all these worlds. What's the best way to reduce fat? Get all the animal products out and keep the oils really low. What's the best way to increase fiber? Vegan diet. Everything you're eating has fiber in it, okay? So that's why the diet works. Let me describe this in a little bit more detail. How could fiber affect estrogen? That red kind of triangular looking organ, that's your liver. Your liver is a filter. It filters your blood and it filters out estrogens, among other things. And the estrogens go down that little green bile duct and they end up in your intestinal tract, and their fiber adheres to the estrogens, soaks them up just like a sponge. And then the fiber carries it out through the waste. You literally flush it down the toilet. But what if your liver pulls that estradiol out of your blood and it sends it into the intestinal tract? And what if there's no fiber there because you ate salmon for lunch or yogurt or a pork chop? These are not plants. They don't have fiber. Well, if there's no fiber in your digestive tract, the estrogens don't stay there. They pass out into your circulation again, and they go back to the liver. Doctors call this enterohepatic circulation, where estrogens just cycle around and around and around in your bloodstream. They never get out of your body until you start the healthy vegan diet that brings the fiber back in and allows you to get rid of it. Okay, so this is spam. Fiber or no fiber? What do you think? No fiber? You're right. This is a trash can. There it goes. KFC, is there any fiber in KFC chicken? only if you eat the carton. Sorry, chicken is not a plant. Doesn't have any fiber in it. That can go too. Now, there are some things that started out life as plants, but in the factory, their fiber was removed. They became unrecognizable, and we're going to get rid of those too. But I think you get the idea. So let me describe a real life case of this. Catherine grew up in Louisiana. She was in the Air Force, an engineer. And in 2003, she got a one-way ticket to Iraq, courtesy of the US government. She was building military bases. And when you're working really hard and you're in a war zone and you're eating what the government gives you, you don't gain a whole lot of weight. But eventually, Catherine's military tour of duty in Iraq came to an end. The government sent her back home to the US. She got off the plane, and her family resolved to feed her, to give her all the things that she had missed in Iraq. What did you miss? Cheese, mac and cheese snacks. And a friend of hers actually gave her an entire case of mac and cheese dinners, 48 boxes, I'm not kidding. She ate them every day for 48 days straight. And she gained some weight, but she also developed endometriosis. That's that condition where the cells that are supposed to be lining the uterus are now ending up all around your abdomen as these little sort of raisins. They're swelling and bleeding and scarring, and they cause terrible pain. That was her problem. This is a big cause of not just pain, but infertility as well. And her doctor put her on various kinds of pills and hormonal treatments. Things weren't working. The doctor finally said, I got a treatment that will make this go away, and that's a hysterectomy. She said to her doctor, I'm not so sure. I'm 27. My husband and I are kind of newlyweds, and we were thinking we might raise a family. I'm not so sure I'm ready to have a hysterectomy. The doctor said, well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're almost certainly infertile anyway because of the degree of endometriosis that you have. This hysterectomy, will take out your uterus, we'll take everything out, you'll feel better. So she agreed to have this procedure. But before she could have the procedure, she talked to a nutrition counselor who told her about a diet that was no animal products, keeping oils really low, exactly the things that we've been talking about. And she started to feel better. In fact, she felt a lot better. Her pain was down, her energy was better, but she wasn't entirely better. There was still some pain left in her abdomen. So she thought, I've got nothing to lose. I may as well have the hysterectomy. So she showed up at the hospital on the day of her operation, put her on the table, they anesthetized her. An hour later, she woke up. She was in the recovery room. Her mother was there, and so was the doctor. And the doctor said, Catherine, I need to tell you something. I opened you up, and your endometriosis is practically gone. I didn't take out your uterus. I didn't do the hysterectomy. The reason you have some pain left is you have some adhesions where the scarring had been. But all I had to do was free up those adhesions. I didn't take out your uterus. I think you're going to be fine now. I don't think you're going to have any pain. And I don't know why this happened. Her mother said, she went vegan. The doctor said, stop it. Foods don't cause endometriosis. And there's no way a vegan diet or any other diet is going to cure it. I think maybe this is a miracle. Miracles happen all the time. Well, good on that doctor for not taking out her uterus. But the doctor didn't realize that endometriosis is driven by estrogens, and estrogens are driven by food. A low-fat, high-fiber vegan diet calms down the estrogens, calms down the disease process, and her improvement was kind of predictable, really. So she lost a lot of weight. She was not infertile, as it turned out. And Catherine then dedicated her life to teaching other women how to take back their health. She's now one of our Food for Life instructors with a wonderful clinic in Dallas, Texas. Okay, so what have I been saying? I've been saying that insulin can be controlled by diet, and so can estrogen. But what about that cheese thing? She loved cheese. Does cheese have hormones in it? Well, cheese comes from milk. Milk comes from a cow. Cows don't make any milk at all until they are pregnant and give birth. Now, people who have a heart for animals know about this because they know that the dairy industry sounds kind of innocuous, but the way it actually works is the farmer artificially inseminates the cow. 9 months later, the cow gives birth, and that calf is not going to be nursing with mom. If that calf is male, he's going to become veal very soon. If that calf is female, she will be raised in an isolation hutch until she's ready to have somebody artificially inseminate her. And all of them are dead by age 4. Now, in nature, a cow lives to be about 20. On a dairy farm, they're killed at about 4 for a low-grade hamburger because they're just not producing enough to justify their continued existence. So what I'm saying is the dairy industry is a meat industry. They all become beef, but you just artificially inseminate them, separate them from their calves over and over and over again until you kill them. So the reason I'm telling you this is along the way, the cows are milked during each successive pregnancy. The pregnancy is 9 months. During that 9 months, they're cranking out estradiol. The estradiol then gets into the milk. So every slice of cheese that you ever ate, every cup of yogurt, every glass of milk had estradiol in it from the cow. There is no such thing as hormone-free milk. Cows make estradiol. So Gary Fraser, whom you may know from the Adventist Health Study too, published some amazing data in 2020. He looked at dairy products and breast cancer. Why? Because estradiol drives breast cancer, and there's estradiol in dairy products. Okay, along the x-axis here, the horizontal axis, that's milk intake in a large group of women in the Adventist Health Study too. And you see it going from quarter cup, half cup, a cup, 2 cups. The y-axis is breast cancer risk, and you could see this clear-cut relationship. Milk drives breast cancer. Why? Because of the estradiol, we believe. And milk also drives breast cancer mortality. This study done in 2013 is of women who had had breast cancer in the past. They all had a diagnosis of cancer. But the question was, do you survive? The green bar is women who ate relatively little high-fat dairy, less than a half a serving per day. The red bar is the women who have 1 or more servings of high-fat dairy per day. That's cheese or whole milk, ice cream, that kind of stuff. And as you can see, the risk of dying of breast cancer is 50% higher for women consuming the most high-fat dairy. What are we saying? We're saying that there are hormones in dairy products that the dairy industry doesn't want to tell you about, but they are in every dairy product, and they can drive breast cancer and all kinds of other things. Okay, we've talked about diabetes, we've talked about menstrual pain. Let's go to the other end of the reproductive window and talk about menopause. You're in the board of directors meeting, trying to make a presentation, and suddenly the room becomes 200 degrees. This is a hot flash. Your blood vessels are dilating. We call that vasodilation. And it's just as if somebody turned on the radiator. Well, hot flashes can happen throughout the day. They can happen at night. You wake up drenched with sweat, and they can really interfere with your quality of life. Now, researchers noticed something interesting back in the 1980s. In Japan, hot flashes were pretty uncommon. 15% of women had them, 85% didn't. When women had them, they were pretty mild. But what happened in Japan? The diet westernized. Cheese and meat became common in the 1990s, 2000s. By about 2001, 2003, postmenopausal women had hot flashes about 40% of the time. So it was much more common. So what was protective before? Part of the answer was isoflavones. Isoflavones are natural compounds in soy products. They have names like genistein, daidzein, glycetine. The names aren't important. What's important is that tofu or soy milk, anything from a soybean, has these isoflavones that reduce breast cancer risk. But they also seem to reduce hot flashes at least a little bit. So part of the value of a Japanese diet was that it had that there's a lot of soy in it, traditionally, as well as it being a mostly plant-based diet. It was not a dairy diet. It wasn't even a really meaty diet. It was mostly rice, some fish, some meat, but not that much until recent times. However, there's another piece of this. Let's go to somewhere far away from Japan. Fly down to Cancun, Mexico. Rent a car, drive 2 hours west, and you'll be in a town called Valladolid. And right next to it is Chichimela. And researchers interviewed 118 postmenopausal Mayan women who have traditional foods that they eat. And what they discovered is that none of them had any hot flashes. They didn't have any menopausal symptoms at all. Well, wait a minute. This is not Japan. They don't eat rice. What grain do they eat? Corn. with every meal. Okay, so they're eating a lot of grain, but soybeans, I don't think so. What are they? Oh, they have black beans, and they have a lot of vegetables. This is la chaya, which to this day you can go into a Walmart in Mexico and you'll see la chaya there for sale. So lots of plants. And what our research team started to hypothesize is that there's something about a combination of beans, especially soybeans, and a plant-based diet that seems to help against hot flashes. So what we did is we brought in a group of women who all had hot flashes, and we began a diet. Half of them were randomly assigned to a control group with no diet change. Let me describe the diet. No animal products, minimize oils, this is going to sound familiar to you, and have a half a cup of cooked soybeans every day. And what we found was pretty remarkable. That first of all, people lost weight. If they were in the control group, they gained weight, as people do. But in the vegan group, they lost almost 8 pounds in 12 weeks. That's good. But what the women really appreciated is that their moderate to severe hot flashes, the ones that woke them up at night and drove them crazy during the day, were cut by 84%. And how many of the women had hot flashes at all? All of them did at the beginning, but by 12 weeks, almost 60% of them were free of moderate to severe hot flashes. There was no big change in that variable in the control group. And then when we looked not just at vasomotor symptoms, that's hot flashes, but also psychosocial symptoms, your mood, physical symptoms like headache, or sexual symptoms, all of these improved more in the diet group than in the control group. Okay, so by the way, when you talk about soy, if you talk to a friend about it, or even a doctor, they'll say, I read somewhere that soy is linked to breast cancer. And that's made people afraid to eat tofu. However, researchers have looked at this in great detail. And as of 2008, we already had many, many studies, particularly in Asians and Asian Americans, who are studied because there's a huge range from very low to extremely high soy intake, and the pattern is clear. High soy intake cuts the risk of breast cancer by about 29%. In other words, more soy, less breast cancer risk. And for women who have had breast cancer in the past, a high soy intake reduces the likelihood of dying of it. Let me be clear. You'll sometimes hear even a well-meaning oncologist say, well, you've got a breast cancer diagnosis. I would avoid soy now because that will cause your cancer to progress. The opposite is true. If a woman who has had a breast cancer diagnosis stops eating soy, she is now in the high mortality group. Women who consume more tofu and soy milk and so forth have less risk of getting cancer and less risk of dying of cancer. Now, soy products are optional. You don't have to have them, but they're versatile. Soy bacon is always better than pork bacon. Soy milk is always better than cow's milk. So it's something to think about. All right, so this is something. We've already talked about how insulin can be changed by our diet. Estrogen can be changed. Hot flashes can be knocked out to a great degree. One more thing. The base of your neck, your thyroid gland. You might not know it's there, but it oversees your body's use of energy, and there it is. It's shaped like a little butterfly right there at the bottom of your neck. Okay, you can be hypothyroid. Your thyroid gland is not cranking out much thyroid hormone. You're running on empty, and you feel it. You feel weak, you're tired, you're sensitive to cold, your intestinal tract is misbehaving, you're gaining weight, you're feeling depressed. You look in the mirror and your skin doesn't look right, your hair doesn't look right. The opposite can happen. You could be hyperthyroid, too much thyroid hormone. And that's just the opposite. Most people lose weight, they feel revved up, their pulse is high, they've got sometimes a tremor, they're feeling really warm. This is having too much thyroid hormone. What the heck is causing this? Well, the first thing is kind of a no-brainer. This is thyroid hormone, or thyroxine. And the little purple blobs you see, that's iodine. You need iodine in order to make thyroid hormone. If it's not in your diet, you can't make it. Well, what's the deal with that? You know that iodized salt has iodine. About a century ago, the Morton Company started marketing iodized salt, and so they kind of wiped out iodine deficiency in the US. However, we are modern people, so we are more likely to have sea salt or kosher salt or Himalayan salt, they're not iodized. And so you might be missing out on the iodine that you actually need. Okay, well, where else can I find it? I can have iodized salt. That would kind of solve the problem. But sea vegetables, the nori that's used to wrap a sushi roll, or the wakame that's in your miso soup, or arame. I don't know if you've ever had arame. This is from Your Body in Balance. This is a cucumber arame salad, just out of this world delicious, especially on a hot summer day. All of these seaweeds have natural sources of iodine in them. And if we lived in a coastal area, we would get plenty of it and we'd do great. Quick caution, kombu, a little too high in iodine. I would not have that be your everyday food. And hijiki has traces of arsenic sometimes, so those are not my favorite seaweeds. But wakame, nori, arame, can't go wrong with them, okay? Now, the dairy industry will say, well, wait a minute. If you drink milk, you'll get iodine. And that's true. Do you know why? Because a cow's udder gets dragged through mud and gets tainted with feces. It gets bacteria all over it in caked milk. And so to clean it up before they attach the milking machine, they squirt, I'm not making this up, they squirt an iodine-based disinfectant on the teats of the udder. And so some of the disinfectant gets in the milk, and they're bragging that if you consume this disinfectant as part of your milk, you'll get some iodine. So, all right, you're way better off with either iodized salt or sea vegetables. Okay, now there's one other thing. Thyroid antibodies are actually the main cause of thyroid disease in the US. What this means is, for some reason, you might have plenty of iodine, but your body is making antibodies to your thyroid gland. What's this about? Your body makes antibodies to knock out viruses or to kill bacteria. But now your body is making antibodies that are attacking you. And if the antibodies attack your thyroid gland, they can shut down its ability to make thyroid hormone. If the antibodies attack the control mechanism for your thyroid gland, you can't stop making thyroid hormone. So you end up being hyperthyroid. Okay, so can foods affect us? Let's go back to the Adventist Health Study. They did a cool evaluation of almost 66,000 people. They looked at the prevalence of low thyroid, hypothyroidism. You can clearly see the vegans did the best. The people who did the worst were the dairy enthusiasts, the lacto-ovo vegetarians. They had the highest prevalence of hypothyroidism. But now look at hyperthyroidism. Vegans again did the best. The omnivores now do the worst with much more hyperthyroidism. What's going on? What we think is going on is that meat proteins, dairy proteins, maybe egg proteins are mistaken by your body for an invader. Like, this must be a virus that's invading me. And so your body makes antibodies to it that end up attacking your thyroid gland. And when people get the meat proteins out of their diet, or the egg or dairy proteins out of their diet, that antibody reaction is less likely to occur. Can I change my diet if I have a thyroid problem now? We don't know. We don't have good research studies on this yet. However, a lot of people are not waiting. This is Nancy. Nancy's 49. She's an accountant. She had hypothyroidism since she was 19. She was treated with levothyroxine, but even so, she was overweight and she was tired and she was sensitive to cold and she felt crummy. And her weight and her total cholesterol coincidentally hit the same number of 265. Not good. But she decides to start a completely low-fat vegan diet, and she did, and her weight went down to 150. Cholesterol went down, but her thyroid got back to normal. And her doctor was able to stop her levothyroxine, and she remains euthyroid, meaning healthy. And in fact, there she is. On the left, that's before. On the right, that's after. That's a woman who got her energy back. And she's feeling great. And there she is starting her 5K. Okay? All right. Last thing I just want to mention. What kind of diet should we follow? And how do we get there? A lot of doctors say a kind of an old-fashioned thing. You ought to go on a Mediterranean diet. Mediterranean diet, doesn't that sound great? It sounds appealing because, you know, who knows what you're going to eat, but it all sounds really romantic. I'll be on the coast of Tuscany sipping some rosé. A Mediterranean diet might be popular, but does it work? our research team put it to the test, and we published our results in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. I want to walk you through it. We brought in 62 participants. They all wanted to lose weight. Half of them were randomly assigned to a Mediterranean diet. The other half were randomly assigned to a vegan diet. And after 16 weeks, everybody took a pause. Then they switched to the other diet. Okay, let me share with you how we did this. We had dietitians meet with each group once a week, and the dietitians believed in and followed the diet themselves. And they kept everybody pumped up and on track. And this is weight. The Mediterranean group at first was really thrilled. They thought, what a wonderful diet. I can eat fish and I can eat little bits of chicken and things like that. And I can slather olive oil on my foods. But then as the weeks went by, they discovered that their weight loss was really slow. That's the tan line here. But the vegan group, at first they were nervous. Like, will I miss cheese, miss chicken? They discovered they kind of didn't miss it. And they discovered their weight loss was quick and really effective. Okay, 16 weeks went by, stop. Now, everyone was given 4 weeks off. They could do anything they wanted. Then they switched to the opposite diet. And the Mediterranean group that was now going vegan discovered on this vegan diet, their weight loss starts to pick up really well. They're losing weight fast. But the group that had been on a plant-based diet and was now starting the Mediterranean diet, the weight loss ground to a halt. They started to get angry. And I want to tell you something. I was in their weekly meetings. And they said, you're telling us we now have to eat chicken wings and fish and olive oil and all these things that we haven't been eating for 16 weeks. We don't like this. We want to go back to the plant-based diet. And for science, they stuck with the Mediterranean diet. They couldn't wait for those 16 weeks to be gone so they could go back to that healthy vegan diet that knocks the weight off. What did we learn? We learned that a Mediterranean diet sounds sexy. It is not effective for weight loss. And when it comes to cholesterol, Mediterranean diet knocked 3 points off their cholesterol. Vegan diet knocked off almost 19. And when it comes to LDL or bad cholesterol, vegan diet much more effective. Knocked 15 points off compared to less than 1 point reduction for the Mediterranean diet. Now, with regard to blood pressure, both diets were effective. And for some reason, the Mediterranean diet here actually did have an edge for both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. But if the patient says, I would like to lose weight or get my cholesterol down, a Mediterranean diet really is not effective and shouldn't be sold as effective. A low-fat plant-based diet really works. Okay, I'm sold. I want to do it. I'm going to have fruits and grains and vegetables and legumes, and you should take vitamin B12, which you know about this. You need it for healthy blood. You need it for healthy nerves. You don't need much. You only need 2.4 micrograms a day. But you should be supplementing vitamin B12. This is good advice for everybody, no matter what your diet is, but it's essential for vegans. Okay. But if I'm going to start this diet, it sounds like kind of a heavy lift. How do I do it? Logic alone won't get you there. If you're just explaining to a person how to do it, logic plays almost no role in human behavior. You know this is true. If a person's planning their breakfast, they're not thinking about how many grams of fiber they need. They're thinking about what I'm going to call noise, things that were advertised, or things that are part of their culture, what their parents ate, or things they want to eat, or things that they can afford, or things they're kind of addicted to. And if you're explaining to somebody about how to go vegan, here's what happens. I'm going to show you neurologically the problems they get into. You plant an idea in a person's head. A vegan diet is very helpful for you. The ideatron in the brain, you know about this? The ideatron releases ideas like a plant-based diet would be good, but that then irritates the famiglia. The ideas irritate the famiglia, which then stimulates the don't do it tary gland to release endorphins. And the endorphins knock out the idea. Okay? I'm kidding you. But the point is, when people just explain how to follow a vegan diet, people don't really quite get that. And their cultural prejudices kind of well up. Here's what we do instead. Break it into 2 steps. Step 1, just check out the possibilities. Think about what you would eat if you were following a vegan diet. Take 7 days and just think about what it would be. And let me give you some suggestions. And you can write these down. If you're thinking about making a transition, get a piece of paper, write all the meals times on it, and then let's put in oatmeal for breakfast, pancakes for breakfast, almond milk in my breakfast cereal. Whatever it is that you actually would like, put it on your list. Veggie pizza without cheese, veggie burger. Go out to an Italian restaurant and have the spaghetti arrabbiata or marinara or the pasta fagioli, or go to the Latin American place and have the veggie fajitas or bean burritos. Or at a Chinese restaurant, they have tofu dishes, rice dishes, vegetable dishes. Japanese dishes, I don't need to tell you. They've got the cucumber roll, the asparagus roll, the sweet potato roll, all kinds of wonderful choices. Even fast food places. Taco Bell, not the pinnacle of culinary art, but they'll have a bean burrito. That'll get you going. Okay, fine. So a week has gone by and I've made my list. And I'm surprised to discover there's a lot of plant-based things that are appealing to me. So step 2 is a 3-week test drive. We do this at Barnard Medical Center. Now that the patient's got their list, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to do a test drive of a completely vegan diet for 21 days. At the end of that time, the patient feels better. Their blood sugar has fallen. They're losing weight. And their tastes have changed. They haven't missed chicken wings. They haven't really thought about cheese in that period of time. So now they've got power because they're not starving the weight off. It's coming off on its own. We're going to help you some more. There's the 21-day vegan Kickstart app. Have you seen this? It's on your iPhone and your Android for free. It's in English. It's in Spanish. You can download this 21-day vegan Kickstart. At our clinic, at our Barnard Medical Center, we have this little take-home thing that we give to all our patients. You click that QR code on your iPhone, and up come little videos all about how to eat to tackle your diabetes. They're fun, they're short, they're really non-threatening, and it's an easy way to understand the facts. Or you can just do it on your laptop. Just go to foodinstructions.org and you'll see them. This is my book, Your Body in Balance. If you want to, you can take your phone and shoot that QR code right now. That'll give you more information about it. The reason I wrote Your Body in Balance is I got excited about the idea that foods could affect insulin and thyroid hormone and estrogen and testosterone and lots more. And so I decided to write what to me is kind of an owner's manual for trying to get to the next layer of health. So that's what this is about. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. And by the way, I hope you enjoy the foods that are in it. Lindsay Nixon did all the recipes for Your Body in Balance, and they came out scrumptious. So thank you for all the work that you have been doing there. Thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. Thanks very much.
Mahalo to you, Dr. Neal Barnard, for this really excellent, impressive presentation.